of Sarah Clips. City of Sarah Clips. City of Sarah Clips. City of Sarah.
MC Wickett Crickett, 1959 to 2015. Fifth Ward. One of the earliest advocates of rap music in Houston, Daryl Veal arrived in the city in the 1970s from New York and soon began hosting shows with live bands in Fifth Ward cafes. In the following decades, MC Wickett Crickett was there for every movement in Houston hip-hop. He only recorded one 12-inch, Where You From / Can I Hit It, in 1996, but nevertheless forged a legacy that includes giving DJ Screw his first gig, as he did for countless other Houston artists. Wickett Crickett remained a visible and important part of Houston rap culture, emceeing talent shows and weekly club nights all over the city until his death from lung cancer in November 2015. He was 56. What year did you come to Houston?
Well, I was down here in the 70s on and off, but the rap era didn't start down here until 80, 82, 83. It was something new to them, because I was going to clubs, freestyling, hosting little shows, but they didn't know what it was. They had bands playing in clubs, people singing. They used to have talent nights, and I used to get up there and win the prizes because I would freestyle. Like the drummer would play a beat, I'd tell him to put a beat on, and I'd just freestyle about the people in the audience. They didn't know what that was, like being able to rhyme and talk about what people got on and what the next person is doing and all of that. That was something new to them.
Was this before the Rhinestone Wrangler?
Yeah, that was way before the Rhinestone Wrangler.
What clubs were you in then? Talking about late 70s, early 80s.
Well, back during that time, they used to have a club called the Fresh Connection. It used to be off of Kelly. And what was that street? Los Angeles? I know it was off of Kelly and something, but it was before you get to Hirsch Road. They put up a bus station there now, but everybody in the 70s and the early 80s, that's where they used to go, to the Fresh Connection. It was right on the north side. It was like real crunk. And then they had a club on the south side called the Blue Ice. They had another little club. There was Turning Point 1, Turning Point 2, and they was all cafe clubs. The Fresh Connection came when the hip-hop scene came. But before the hip-hop scene, everything was like cafe clubs because you had bands playing in clubs.
So it was kind of spread out. The club on the south side, where was that? Ice.
That was Club Blue Ice. That was on the south side. Turning Point 1, Turning Point 2. And there was another club. It's still there. I can't think of the name of it, but it's on OST. And what is that? That turns into Griggs, where it split up there. At Griggs and Calhoun. There was a little club right there. Can't think of it.
The spot?
Right across from Church's Chicken. It's been there for ages. It's still there. And one of the dudes that I met, he was DJ Slick Rick down here. He now plays guitar for a dude named Mel Waiters, a professional blues cat. But he was like one of the first DJs I met that really helped me out a lot when I first came down here. It's right across from Church's on Griggs. Right there at Griggs and Calhoun, there's a little club right there. Been there for ages. It looked like it's small, but go in and it's all right. It's a pretty nice size.
You're not talking about the spot? That really long place next to King's?
Nah, it's not called the spot. It's right across the street from Church's Chicken, on Griggs and Calhoun. I can't think of the name of it, but it's blue on the outside. Oh, I know what the name of it is. The name of it is King Leo's. That's what it is. King Leo's. So what was going on there? You were in there and people were freestyling. I was the only one freestyling. They had comedy nights. They would have comedy and bands playing in clubs. They didn't know nothing about the rap era. The era really hadn't got to them yet. The first thing they knew about rap down this way was Rapper's Delight and Curtis Blow. But rap had been out. Rap had been out before then. You had rappers been out in New York who'd never even made it out this way.
Once it came in, did it creep in or did it explode?
it kind of exploded. It kind of exploded because people knew about it from Rapper's Delight and from Curtis Blow. Curtis Blow came with stories. These Are the Breaks was a story about what you go through every day in life. So, in the beginning, most of your songs was telling stories, and that's what rap was. In the beginning, hip-hop was fun music with stories about the government, with no money, no jobs, poverty, you know. New York, New York, big city of dreams. Everything in New York ain't always what it seems. Slash, you might be fooled if you come from out of town. Slash, but I'm down by law and I know my way around. Slash, too much, too many people, ... Know what I'm saying? All the stories back then was true stories. And so rap in the beginning was telling people just what it was. But it wasn't so much violence. There was a lot of violence on the rap, but it wasn't as violent as it was when the late 80s came in. Because when the late 80s came in, the world had been introduced to crack. But before that, before crack came, it was always drugs. But it was drugs that older people used, like Quaaludes and Mollies and trees. You know, in the 70s, a bag of weed, a $10 bag of weed, was called a lid. And it was like a fat sandwich bag. You know, now a $10 bag of weed ain't no more than like a little old small something. You know, I mean, everything changed. Weed wasn't the problem. When crack came in, crack took over. Cause crack was something that anybody could afford. You couldn't get no heroin. When Laid Back put the song out about heroin, that was the drug. Heroin was the drug. The white horse. That was about heroin. Because people that had a little money was shooting heroin. That was like the tightest high you could get was heroin. Everybody was getting strung out on needles. But then, a lot of people couldn't afford that fix. So they just broke it down to crack and made it where anybody could afford crack.
That hit Houston too. You're talking about 84, 85, 86.
Yeah, but when it came to Houston, it was pure. And what happened was the Colombians that was coming down here from Miami was bringing it down here and making friends in the black neighborhoods with the blacks and telling them that this was something that, once they got it started out there, because see, a lot of the early people that smoked it became dope fiends because they thought it was something they could handle. When they first started smoking it, they smoked it smashed up. You know, they smashed the rock up, and you could roll it in a joint with some weed. So they thought it was like something to enhance the weed in the beginning, and they called it primos. Well, they felt like, I'm smoking weed in this, I'm not gonna get hooked. But they didn't understand that they were steady getting hooked because it was a mellow drug. The crack in the beginning, it started off smelling kinda sweet and mellow, but it was still cocaine. So then, the more you got hooked on it, the more you didn't want the weed. You wanted the pure cocaine. You need the whole high. And the crack in the beginning was pure crack. It wasn't cut. People didn't start cutting it until the 90s because they wanted to flip their money. So instead of them giving them pure crack, they was going to them little shops, them little weed shops and novelty shops to buy some stuff called propane, recooking they stuff and giving them half coke and half blow.
What was it? Was it baking soda? What was that stuff?
No, it wasn't baking soda. It was like the same stuff you used for a toothache or something. It was like to numb your gums. It was the same effect.
Novocaine.
Yeah, that was the same effect.
So they were using that because people would notice the difference a lot less because it was a numbing effect.
They wouldn't notice the difference because crack did the same thing.
So it wasn't really until the early 90s that people started to cut it. You're right in that people didn't really understand crack when it came out, especially how it snuffed through. But it became the epidemic through the media and...
You had two types of people that had gotten involved with it. You had the people who was already on horse, and when they got it, it was because they couldn't afford the high stuff no more. So instead of trying to pay $50 for a bag, you could take $50 and buy a bunch of big rocks and just cut them up and smoke rocks all day. So when they couldn't afford the heroin, the straight powder, they were buying crack. And the first crack was so pure when it came in that the thing was it kept you high. but it had you where you wanted to keep buying it. Heroin had a longer high, but heroin was more expensive.
Was heroin really popular in Houston in the early 80s, the mid-80s?
Well, in the 70s, it was low key. But it wasn't as bad. Heroin was never really bad down here like it was in New York. You had pimps that came from Dallas and other places, and they would get they girls hooked on heroin or some shit. Normally, pimps use that shit, but wasn't too many regular people messing with that shit because the 70s was the era of the blues. Texas is more the blues people, and Louisiana was next door. They was into blues and Zydeco. But see, New York is like right there on the water where the drug trades was. You got New York, New Jersey, Mississippi, Manhattan, you know, Miami. You got all these people that's right there on the coast, so the drug is right there. For them to get money this way, the East Coast was never bringing drugs here. You know, they had their own problems. New Jersey, Detroit, all them areas wasn't too busy. The crack was right there. They was too busy killing each other for turfs. The crack was already there.
All the crack that was coming into Houston in the 1980s was from Miami, wasn't it?
Yeah, the crack that came into Houston was from Miami. Colombians. Once the Colombians came down here and turned Houston onto it, and you had certain areas of people that had money, that got together and had millions, put all their money together and sent people to Miami to do the pickups. Well, in the early times, the laws didn't really know nothing about the interstate. You could ride all out of town. Crack wasn't really a big epidemic, and they wasn't really worried about. Highway patrol was never really just stopping nobody to check their car for drugs or none of that. That scene didn't come in until after the rap era got real tough. After rap got tough, and rappers started rapping about how they go up and down the highway doing this, that, and the other. That's how the laws started figuring out, okay, so this how they moving it. When they would see cars come in from out of town somewhere with different license plates, they might just take a chance just to stop and check them, just because they kind of looked halfway suspicious. The majority of the time they would come up with something, so the more they start catching people on the interstate, that made them start being more aware of how it's getting in. A lot of rappers shot theyself in the foot because they was telling too much in their rap songs, even how they was FedExing stuff. You know, they got to the point where they was mailing stuff too. They might mail it to an address and wrap it and FedEx it straight to that person. They was all kind of ways it was going on. Greyhound buses or whatever. You know, it got in. Too many rappers started telling the stories about what they was doing, and that's how the cops started knowing stuff. And that was coming through I-10. That was all coming through Louisiana, Mississippi. Yeah, I-10. I-10 was the problem. Anything going down I-10 was always, that was it. They told too many stories about I-10. I mean, you could leave Houston and go all the way to Penn State. 3 days to Penn State or whatever. I mean, you always had people to take it. It just was that when people got busted on the interstate, they started giving up too much information to make their case a little cheaper, cause actually, it was like, the laws didn't want who they caught. They wanted who the source was. They were like, we know you not the person. You're the person who he's making some money off of. We want to know who you're getting it from. What's your contact? So if the person didn't snitch, what they did was they took their cell phones and they just kept records of all the numbers that was in their phone. And they would like call these people back or follow these people to take pictures of them. And they'd start sending out secret indictments. So you got like 20 people involved in different areas getting a secret indictment and not knowing who's telling on who. And they start all telling on each other.
So this is all like late 80s, early 90s, the I-10 Connect.
Just about every rapper, Dallas, even Dallas, everybody knew. Because see, when Miami brought it in, Miami didn't stop in Louisiana. Miami people had a lot of people they deal with right here in Houston, Texas. Cause Houston, Texas is so big that people down here was grinding as to where you couldn't take a chance of taking nothing to New Orleans. Because New Orleans was like the murder capital of the world. Plus, New Orleans, if you got caught with anything in New Orleans, you got 10 years. You got straight 10 years. They was up under the other law, whereas in Houston, If you got 10 years, you might have did 5 years instead of 10. That's how it was in that time. That was before they changed up everything. You know, when the crack came, that was during the time when the government had moved all the foreigners over here and gave them bank accounts and stuff. That's when all your Koreans came in, your Chinese, your Japanese. You know, because flea markets in the 70s was vegetables and grapes and stuff like that. Then flea markets turned into places to go get jewelry and clothes and all that other little stuff. Little clothes that was remade over with a name like the real name, but it wasn't the real stuff.
Knockoffs.
Yeah, see, the first flea markets was vegetables. Flea markets was groceries and vegetables. That's what flea markets was in the beginning. But when crack came, flea markets became places for the Koreans and all your little small vendors to set up in one big spot and sell their merchandise.
The angel dust. Assuming that's pretty much the same thing.
Sherm and angel dust. Yeah, that's the same thing. Well, you never know what that shit cut with, period. That's a murder case, cause that's embalming fluid. I have a sister-in-law. As we speak, I got her. In-law just went to jail for that shit.
She was selling it?
Yep. She on a $30,000 bond right now. I mean, that's a major case. That Sherm is a major case. Drugs is what run the whole United States, and until another drug come out that a lot of money is being moved again, the United States is going to be at a standstill, like it is right now. And that's why you're going to hear more about jacking and robbing, because these cats is used to getting up outside and making $500 to $1,000 a day. And that's gone like the buffaloes. That's why you don't even have like you used to have that City Under Siege. That's been gone. City Under Siege used to be coming, knocking, and kicking doors and running people down. That's been gone because they found out half the time a lot of the laws that was busting people was putting the crack right back out there, giving it to some people they knew to sell it in their area. So I mean, there was so much investigation that half the time they would take the money and the dope and wouldn't return all the money that they took off of people or whatever. So you got corruption everywhere. That's gone, cause there ain't no dope corners like there used to be. The law's been known that. That's why they game is driver's license and insurance now.
Let me ask you this. You saw this because you were in Houston at this time. But in the early 80s when rap came into Houston, it was along the template of what was happening on the East Coast, with groups like Def 4 and Royal Flush, and even the early Ghetto Boys sounding like their New York contemporaries.
Well, Ghetto Boys was the first really gangster. If you check the era, Ghetto Boys themselves really, because they saw a lot of gangster stuff. So when they came out, they was really gangster in the beginning, period. They was always gangster. Def 4 was trying to be hip-hop. They was more or less hip-hop because one of them came from New York anyway. And you know, Royal Flush was from the West Coast. One of them was from the West Coast. I mean, they were from different areas. But Ghetto Boys themselves were straight Fifth Ward gangsters from the dope era or whatever. That's why Scarface and all them, they told us stories of the dope era, of what they saw, of the gangster stuff. You know, they grew up among the dice shooting, the pimps, because Lyons Avenue and Liberty Road and all that is where the prostitutes used to walk 24/7. It was the lands of the pimps and players and hustlers. You know, the dice shooters, the card sharks, the early 70s to 79. All the way up to 79 and 80 was the blues and the cafes and the gyp joints and the pimps and the prostitutes and the heroin and the quaaludes and the trees and the mollies. You know, the black mollies. That was all the early drugs back then.
What neighborhoods was all that being moved in?
3rd Ward and 5th Ward. Because see, 5th Ward used to go all the way to downtown.
And 3rd Ward encompasses downtown. A lot of people don't realize that, but if you look at a map of those old political divisions.
3rd Ward by Elgin, because they had an old radio station that closed down that was really one of the first hip-hop stations. That was KYOK. And then you got KCOH. That's part of 3rd Ward, right there over by Alameda. KCOH is still around. LaBranch was where KYOK used to be at. I can't think of the other street, but it was off of La Branch. That was when the first rap concerts came to Houston. After they went out of business, then you had Love 94 came in. But then Love 94 got sued because one of their DJs was making fun of Michael Jackson when he had that accident when his hair got burnt up. And they sued them. They sued Love 94 right off the air.
So what's the first rap concert you remember coming to Houston?
I did the first rap concert come to Houston. It was at Astroworld. It was the Swatch Watch Fresh Fest.
Who was playing?
It was Run DMC, Houdini, Fat Boys. That was the first actual rap concert. I was one of the hosts of that show. It was a tour. It was the first tour that ever came to Houston. It was called the Swatch Watch Fresh Fest.
When the Fat Boys had their own Swatch Watch, the Limelight. Was that 86, 87? That wasn't the tour the Ghetto Boys were on, though.
Nope, the Ghetto Boys came later. They was doing something, but they never really did anything like that with them. When they did stuff like at JB's Entertainment Center on Scott Street. That's when they had Run DMC that came. They had that group that had that song out, What People Do for Money. They had a couple of little old rap shows came after that. You know, rap was still new, and the young people was into it. But a lot of the young people in Houston didn't have studios. Rap-A-Lot had the studio. Then there was a group out called Jefferson Inc. out the South Side. Wayne Jefferson and them put out the first South Side song and the first song on the North Side before Rap-A-Lot. They had a song called Bedrock. I can't remember the name of the band, but the song was called Bedrock with Ricky Taylor and them. Cause the same dude who did that with them he started them because he used to be with an R&B group in the 70s called Archie Bell and the Drells. Oh, the Glass Band. That was the name of them, the Glass Band. And they had a song called Bedrock.
So is this before McGregor Park?
Yeah, that was before Rob did McGregor Park. He stayed behind Jones School, the man who put him out.
Robert Harlan?
Yeah, because I posted the show when they did it at JB's Entertainment Center.
He was the South Park rapper, Robert Harlan, right?
It was a man. They had a studio at his house. It was a family, and they recorded that for Rob. The man that did it was a man named Robert. He let his family. They used to throw stuff. They had a big concert coming up they threw at JB's Entertainment Center. But Rob and them, they did it at his house, at the studio they had in his house. And they had some band perform. During that time, Rap-A-Lot was doing stuff. Lil J was a good friend of mine. At that time, Jay came over there to check the show out just to see what it was all about. That's when Rob had that song, McGregor Park. We was going to McGregor Park on Sundays. But then after the law started tripping, they took it all the way to the north side, and everybody started going to Deucin Park on Sundays.
Where's that?
Deucin Park? Way north. It's way on the north side. That's when Slick Rick's song Lottie Dottie was popular.
I ask because Houston rap is a commentary on the neighborhoods where rap came from in Houston. 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, South Park.
Acres Homes, all the neighborhoods. You gotta understand, all black neighborhoods. And then there were drugs in Spring Branch because the Hispanics that stayed over there sold drugs. And the white kids was getting it, so crack was everywhere. You had certain areas where the area of Westheimer where most of the white people stay. Wasn't no drugs over there because there was no low income over there. Wasn't nothing really over there. If anybody was selling drugs over there, it was big stuff. It was weight. But most of your low income areas is where the drugs at. Anywhere that was a neighborhood that was a lot of blacks or a lot of Hispanics, that's where your drugs was at. The lower income. So that's all neighborhoods. 4th Ward, 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, South Park, Sunnyside, the whole North Side, Acres Homes, Trinity Gardens, 5th Ward, Cashmere Gardens, South Park, Sunnyside, Hiram Clark, Mo City, every neighborhood. I mean, it was fast money.